Hello and welcome to another Build With Me video. In this video I will go from beginning to end of the build for the field, which I've been working on over the last few weeks. I do hope you enjoy it and maybe you will build along, and if you do, please do send me some pictures via YouTube and I'll be very happy to show them in a future video. I'll shut up now as I think this will be quite a long video again, and I hope that you enjoy it, and I will see you at the end of the video. Tonight is a tired night and it will be an early night to bed. But before I do, I'm going to carry out a few processes. First of all, I'm going to be going with a quick drying MDF sealant, and I'm going to put it across these 7 A4 sheets of MDF, which I'll be using to create some terrain on. So that's what I'm about to do. And there you have it. That is 7 A4 sheets of MDF that have now been primed with the sealant on one side. This is quick drying, so I should be able to get the other side done this evening as well, and then I'll be able to make use of them for fields or whatever else, bases for houses, whatever I wish for. One of the biggest problems I have with MDF is it always seems to warp, and I really hope that this stuff prevents that. So this is going to be another voyage of discovery for me. As part of my push to get to battle companies for Middle-earth SBG, I need to finish off quite a lot of these 28mm buildings. This is my focus. I'm putting off all my other projects until I finish this. I'm refusing to start anything new. So with the ruined watchtower going well, and I've also made some good progress on the Sarissa MDF buildings, what I would like to do now is focus on finishing off the scenery and the terrain, the grass and flock and what have you around this building. And I'm also going to put an extension. This will be optional, but it will allow me to have a back area, a small field to conjoin with this base, so that I can either put this in isolation or I can also have it as a slightly grander layout with some fences and a bit of a field at the back. So that's my plan now. I'm going to get myself set up and I will come back to you when I'm ready. Ideally, I would have had this idea of the continuation board before I put my sand and paint initial base cover down on this board, but it's okay. It's not going to be the worst thing in the world. What I'm going to do is I've made a practice piece on one of my metal bases, which is a simple fence. That is a good example of what I'm going to attempt to put around the edges of this board. And I'm going to make a ploughed field, which is something I've wanted to do for a long time and I've been thinking about for a long time. And I saw an exceptional idea on one of the groups I follow on Facebook, and I am huge apologies, can't remember which one, which is to use glued down lengths of string, so thick string, and then that can then go underneath my standard base and it will look like it's got the got the ploughed effect to it. I will also be doing, I won't be doing that over the entire thing, I'll also be doing some different types of layout on here. So the first thing to think about is I have a door at this end here, and what will be happening is there will be a little path coming down, and I will put a fence across the back of this. And I will also put a gate here, which is going to be another bit of fun for me to make an opening gate. And that will allow this to butt up without a fence on this end, so this can either be an open-ended isolated or it can have this fence. And we'll have a fence running around the other 3 edges, and the path will go to this gate and then we'll continue in and go into the crops and other long grasses and other things that will be on this board. So I'm going to sketch that out, and you're welcome to watch at high speed. So that's very basic and you can't see what I've written. I've drawn roughly the area where I want a little bit of muddy or bare patch where coming through the gate will have led. On the left hand side I'm going to have the ploughed field, and I'm going to have that taken up about, not just over a quarter, not quite all the way down to the bottom. And I will have the fence coming across here. So it will leave an area at the bottom which will not have a fence on it. And then I will have grassland here, and I will have rough area at the bottom. So that's the rough design. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to start making my fence, and I'm going to start gluing that on. And also what I've decided is next to this path here I'm going to have a stump, so a cut down tree, because that is also good, always good fun, and it just makes for a little bit more interest in terms of moving around the building. So that's my plan. I will now turn the camera off because the battery is going, and I will return to you when I have something new to show you, and also when the battery is better. And what I'm about to do is using this big lump of cord, I'm going to have a go at this technique for making a ploughed field. I've not practiced before shooting this, so it could go very badly wrong. Okay, maybe a slightly drunken plough horse, but a plough field-ish nonetheless. I have decided that I'm not going to bother with the fence on this for now. I'm going to make more of these scatter terrain fences that I have here and use those instead, because I think that that's going to be more flexible, and it's easy enough for me to place them down the edges if I want them, or not I can have a larger for open area, so that's what I'm going to do. Next up is to let this to dry and pick another task to do. So the experiment with these hasn't worked. They've dried skewiff and I'm not very happy. So my plan is to take them off and think again. I will come back on this when I've had a think and had a better idea. I'm back looking at doing the field, which is going to be used to win the Battle Company's campaign and will go with the MDF buildings. If you remember last time I was doing this, I attempted to use a technique which just didn't work. I used some cord, some Hessian rope type stuff, and attempted to glue it down to make a ploughed field. And what happened was, because the PVA dries, and as it dries it shrinks, it actually shrank and moved the furrows, and so it just didn't look very good. So I tore it all off and put it away for quite a while. So now I'm back with a different idea which hopefully will work better. It's a more traditional idea, and sometimes it's better to go with the tried and tested. So let's have a look and see whether this one works. As I say, a much more traditional method. This is going to use corrugated card. I am going to put it in roughly the same place as I had it previously, on my previous attempt. But I have decided that on this side I'm going to put a small pond, and I'm going to put some ducks in that pond, because you're going to have a little bit of a kind of garden area and a small duck pond, and I might put a little shed here, and it will be quite a traditional looking garden. So I'm going to get stuck into that, and I will invite you back when I have something a little bit more exciting to show than this. I have cut out a relatively flat section of the longer corrugated card and put some PVA on the back, and now just use my finger. I'm going to spread that over the cardboard. You don't need to have too much PVA to do anything. In fact, the more PVA you put, the more it's likely to shrink and cause you problems. So less really is more in this case. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it roughly in the centre and I can see where that was because I've got the old PVA there, roughly in the centre of where I previously did the field. Now the reason for that is, to get it roughly straight, is I am going to put a fence around this, and I'm going to complete this a little bit more than I kind of went when it went wrong. Kind of lost my motivation there, which does happen to everyone. So with that down, what I'm going to do is start making the fence. I will invite you along to show you how I'm going to do that. What we have here is matchsticks without the match end, bought from any craft store. And what we have next to it, next to them even, is roughly a miniature, which is on the 28mm scale that I'm building this for. And what I'm looking at doing is working out roughly how long I want to trim these down so that my hedge, or my fence even, is about a good size. Now a good sized fence will be roughly chest height on a human to keep animals out and make it look secure. And so what you can see there is that's going to be from the 5 here to the 3, so it's going to be about 2 centimeters long. What that means is I can get 2 uprights from each of these matchsticks. So what I'm going to do is get my chop it out and set 2, and I'm going to need a lot because I have a large length of the edge of this MDF that I'm working on to put a fence around. So let's get started. I have cut quite a number of these at 2 centimeters length, and what I'm now going to do is try to stick them in place. This might work again, this might not. You probably are recognising something of a theme here. I'll be doing this with PVA. I have PVA on this plate, and rather than using a brush or anything, what I'll do is just dollop it on. So dip it in the pile of PVA, and stick it onto the board. I will get on with this. No point in you watching that, that'll be very boring. Actually, I might leave it running, maybe I'll do some music. So I'm not going to do this edge yet because I want to make a gate. And as you can see, some of them are dropping and falling over, which I did expect. You can do this with super glue. I've done it in the past with super glue gel, but I want to try it with PVA because I'm stubborn, and it should work. It might just take a little bit of delicacy, and patience is a good thing to learn. One of the reasons why they might be falling over is you could find that you don't have a straight edge down on the base. So if there were ones that are continually falling over, you can either swap them over so that you have the other end up, or go and get an entirely different length that you've cut. Also, do bear in mind that this will have basic material put over it, which will then act as an additional reinforcement. So these will be planted into the basic material. I'm going to sit and straighten these and do something else, and then straighten them and then do something else. So I will invite you back when I have something a little bit more interesting to show you. Next up on the field, I would like to put a pond in this corner. So what I'm going to do is line where I've drawn in pencil here with some of this WS Scenics glue, which holds its shape a bit better than PVA. And then I'm simply going to use the sand to scatter over the top of that. What that will do is create a very simple dam, so when I then come to do the rest of my terrain, it won't go into there and I can leave that clear for my paint and then Liquitex. So I have the sand and I will scatter it over. This is not a very scientific technique, but I know that it works. Apart from when a big dollop falls out like that. As if by magic, we have the outline of a pond. I will leave that to dry and then I will put my scenic paint around the rest of it to cover it over, and that will not now bleed into my pond. Next up, we're going to put the terrain paint and sand over the rest of this field. So I have given this a very good shake. Let's get it open, paint it on liberally, and then sprinkle the sand over. As you can see, I'm pretty liberal with my application of the paint and also with the amount of sand that I sprinkle. I'm also moving around the board in sections, so I've done this little bit and then a bit over here and then a bit here. What I will now do in a very short while is empty all that sand that's loose back into my bucket and do the bits that I missed. It dries very quickly because the sand soaks up the water and the glue, and so it does go off very quickly so that you can empty this off pretty much as long as that's been. Let's do that. And there you can see that that has worked very nicely. I have my area here which I wanted, which is for my pond, but the rest of the bit is getting covered with sand well. So let's carry on and do the rest. So there you are. I will go and wash my brush, which is the first thing to do once you finish using the brush. Always clean it in cold water. And when I come back, I will empty that off and I will turn the camera back on to show you what that looks like. That is done, and I will now leave that to go off until tomorrow or the next day whenever I come back to it. One of the comments I had after the last vlog, which will date this video for you, vlog number 6, was that I was a bit crazy to have only stuck these on the surface and not to have drilled. And while I think it will be okay for my purposes, I also think that in the future I might try to do that technique to show it as well. Now for me, I'm only making these terrain pieces for myself and for Angela, so we're pretty careful when we play, and they're not getting very much hard use or many hard knocks. However, that will probably be way too delicate if you're going to take this to a club or have this in any way used in a group situation, just because of the nature of it. So I will do another version of this at some point in the future when I do another field, and we'll try to make that a little bit more hard wearing than this one is. So I just wanted to say that right away. So if anyone's watching this and shouting at the screen, why are you doing that, it's stupid, it's because of the situation I'm in. I'm used to making things slightly less durable, but I will try to be a little more durable in the future. The next thing to do on the field is to put another coat of the brown paint over where all of the sand is. This will both act as an additional sealant and also give the colour that I'm looking for, because it's very light at the moment with the sand on it. Now if you like that colour, then what you do at this stage is you put PVA and only PVA without any paint on it, because you may like that kind of dark brown with a bit of sandiness over the top, but it's certainly not what I'm looking for here. So I'm going to do that. I'm not going to bore you with music or speeded up bits, and when it's done then I will let that to dry. So that's the next thing I'm going to do. So that has been painted, and what I would like to point out is that around the pond I have actually put some brown paint that's overspilled. That's deliberate. I will be coming back to the pond at another time, but as Luke will tell you, ponds are not blue, water is not blue, and so this will be a brown and green and murky kind of colour, and then I'll put some of the water effects over the top. But I've deliberately gone so that the brown has actually gone onto the wood, because that will help me when I get to that process. So now this will be left to dry, and I will pick something else to do in my hobby time. The next thing I'm going to do for the field is work on the pond. I have this little bit of bright green reed type thing that I bought at a big box shop, big box store, which I'm going to eventually have in the corner here, just as a little bit of 3D. But first of all I need to paint this, obviously. See, it's a little bit warped, but it's okay. And for that I have two colours. I have a dark green and I have my terrain paint brown. So I'm just going to blend those two together very loosely using my standard cheap brush, which I'm going to keep quite wet. And I'm going to hopefully get quite a nice muddy kind of greeny browny, which I can then put my Liquitex over the top of, and it will then look nicely like a pond. So I'll put some music on and you can watch while I do this. There we are, that's a nice colour, I'm happy with that. It's got just enough brown and just enough green in it. It's not blue, top tip, water isn't blue. And when that's dried, I will be able to put the Liquitex on, and I will also glue this little bit of greenery in place. The paint has dried now, and it's turned out to be a really nice, dirty, dingy green colour, which is exactly what I wanted for this pond. And what I'm going to do now is put a little bit of interest around it. So I have, as I said in the previous video, this very, very bright green thing, which is going to be put in that corner. And I'm also going to make use of a technique that I've used quite a lot. With the renovation that we're going through, we end up with a lot of these sorts of brushes that have been used for staining wood or whatever in the real world. And they make fantastic old dead reeds. So I will be putting some of those mixed in with this bright green thing, and also dotted around somewhere else, and gluing them down just with standard PVA. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stick this in. And this is just standard PVA, so we'll just dollop that in and squash that on. Bloop. Now that has given us the benefit of putting some glue in the middle, which is what I want. So with this brush I will get my super sharp scissors, these strong scissors, and I will pull away, tease out some of the old brushes. Now the fact that they are stained with what's probably walnut, I almost said orech, which is Bulgarian, is good. They are a wonderful colour, if that will focus, there we are. They're a wonderful colour for dead reeds, as I've said. So all I will do is I will drop them in the centre and spread them round a bit, and you have a nice mix with that bright green. So I'm going to carry on with doing this, and I will let you listen to some music maybe, because this will take a few minutes, and I'll show you how it looks when it is done. Okay, so I will try and zoom that in a bit because I don't want to pick it up just yet. Yeah, Look at that. I even positioned it right. There we are. So now you can see how that is looking. I will let that dry, and then I will come in and tidy up any loose strands. But the thing to show you is, as I bring this brush in, I really haven't used very much of it. It's quite hard to position and so zoomed in. I really haven't used very much of it, as you really can't see. There we are. You can get, I mean, I've had this for years, and I've trimmed away it, as you can see, and I've still got loads left. So really it's a very good idea to save those old brushes of yours. Just because they are solid, and that really is solid, doesn't mean they're not going to be useful for you in your hobbying. The next step on this field is for me to do the water effects on the pond, and I'm using Liquitex gel, and I've not used this before, so it's another first for me on camera, live on camera. I just don't learn. Now, cheap as I am, I'm actually going to scrape some of the Liquitex off of the cover, because if you waste not, then you want not. And there's actually quite a lot on there. Probably not quite enough to do the whole thing, but hey. So I don't really mind if it's totally flat, which is why I'm using a brush to do this. And all I'm going to do is paint this on in this area and then let it go off. So, as far as I am aware, this is all you have to do. Yeah. I will need some more, so we'll go to the big pot that I bought. And I'm quite excited about this because I've heard lots of good things about Liquitex. The water effects I've done in the past, I've used either yacht varnish to build it up. I've also used my favourite technique, which I will reprise at some point, I'm sure, which is from Marklin from Sweden, where he uses toilet roll, PVA, and then a gloss varnish like this over the top, and I really love what that looks like. Now my idea here is to have this, to have some, as I've said, to have some 3D, so I want it to look like it's a little bit disturbed. So I'm not trying to do this smooth. If anyone's shouting saying, why have you got all those brush marks in it? That's actually what I'm attempting to achieve, because I want to play with this. So I think that is enough, certainly for now. So I will leave that to dry, to go off, and then we will find out what that looks like probably tomorrow now. The next thing I'm going to do on this is put some thin beads of glue on top of each of the on the little field area here, and then scatter some flock on it. So to do that, I will put some glue on a plate and then use a thin paintbrush to apply it. And I'm not going to apply very much or all the way down, because I want this to look a little bit grotty, not totally growing well necessarily. What I'll do is a couple of lines each, and then scatter, and then a couple of lines more, making sure to leave gaps. Deliberately doing this and not the rest of the base, because I've got a few other plans that I want to start on before I do them. So do that. Then knock it off, and there you are. So I will continue doing that, and I will be back when I've finished that process. And there we have it, one slightly sown field with some nice greenery on top of it. I'll let that to go off and come back later, probably seal that as well with a spray later on, and come back later to do the rest of the grass and also to finish off the fence. I was about to get stuck into more flocking on this, and then realised that what I really need to do is stain the wood. So I've got my trusty Orech, which is walnut stain, which is what I use a lot of. And I'm just going to go around each of these uprights and stain it. Just like that. Maybe not quite that much. A little bit too much on the brush there. Shouldn't take too long, as long as I don't put too much on the brush. And there we are. And one of you may have noticed that at this end, one of them has fallen out. Now that is a bit of a shame in one sense. However, I was looking at this and thinking it's a dead end, which is never a very good idea on a gaming table. And what I'm going to do is going to make a benefit of that, going to make a bonus of that. I will save the little bit that fell off, wherever it's gone to, somewhere underneath there, and I will put it lying down with some broken up the actual board, the cross pieces around it, so that you can get out that side if you wish to. So there we are, that's what I'll do. Anyway, now that's done, I'll let that go off, and then afterwards I can get back to working on the flocking. With the wood staining done, I can get started on the rest of the flocking. I'm actually going to rotate this to make it a bit easier for myself. Now that cardboard there is put in place as a blank for the shed that I'll eventually be building in another video, which will be able to sit there, will be taken off. And obviously I don't want to be putting any flock there. What I'll be doing is I'll be having it as if the shed is there, and as also is a broken down shed. So I can do it so it looks like there was a shed but it's not there anymore, or I will also build the shed, and I'll do that in another video. So I've got my terrain glue, which I will pop a link in the video description of how I made that. And I don't want too much of the flock around where the gate is, so I'm not going to put any in there at the moment. What I'm going to do is do this in little sections like I normally do. So we'll come in with some terrain glue, and then we'll put down the homemade scatter. Now I'm only going to do this with 2 colours. I normally do 3, but again I want it to look a little bit rougher, a little bit scrubbier, and so I think that only 2 of my darker colours are going to go down on this. Okay, that will do for now. I will let that go off and dry overnight, so I'll leave it there, and then I may apply some more. As you can probably tell, what I've tried to show is a track going through the middle and out to the back, to the pond, to the field, to the shed, which will have its door here. That's the idea anyway. So there it is. Once more to the voiceover, as I forgot to turn the microphone on. So what I'm about to do is apply some static grass over the already flocked areas, particularly focusing around the base of the fence posts, because that's where the grass would grow longer, and then later on I'll be adding some more flocking over where I haven't flocked yet. The idea here is to show used areas and unused areas, and where maybe there's been some tracking going to the field and to the pond and to the hedge. Going to be using the World War Scenics materials and glue and static grass applicator, and first of all I start off with some 2mm, I believe it is. So yeah, that's that. Apologies for forgetting to turn the mic on. I am trying to get better at that, but it seems that every week at least I do it once, which is very annoying. So onwards. Sorry for cutting off like that. My memory card on the camera filled up and it took quite a long time to empty it, so I just carried on because, well, everyone's seen flocking before, and if you haven't, just repeat the last couple of minutes of this video over again about 3 or 4 times and you'll see what I did, because yeah, you've already, I think I caught as much, so you can see how I work. So what I have now, having emptied my memory card, is a field that looks a bit like that. Well, exactly like that, because that's the field. So I'm going to let that to dry, which it pretty much already has. And then I may do another layer, or I may not, but at the very least I will then come and put some patchiness down on the paths, and then that will be near enough complete. I'm very, very pleased. I'll then need to finish off the fence, obviously, but that shouldn't take me too long. So yeah, onwards. As I approach completion of the field, I'm coming to finish off the fence, and as you can see here, I got my chop it and my coffee stirrers out, and then I had a better idea, and I'm going to show you what my better idea is, and then I'm going to finish it off and do it off camera because it's going to be a bit fiddly. So my better idea is to use this garden twine and to kind of make it look like they've gone into a they've got some very thick rope and run it all the way around like that. So I'll lift that up slightly so you can see, and I'll do 2 courses of that at least, or maybe 3, and I think that will look really nice, but unique, but different, not something I've seen someone else do, and it's also going to be a lot easier and quicker than attempting to cut and glue lots and lots of coffee stirrers. So that's my plan. I think it's going to work quite nicely. I will do that and let you see what it looks like when it is done. That has turned out very, very nicely. I'm quite pleased with that. What I'm now doing is getting my one of these scrubby fine brushes that's a bit knackered and old, taking some watered down PVA and painting it onto the actual twine, like so. And that will cause it to go stiff, obviously, and also will secure it to each of the uprights. I did briefly consider getting some wire and twisting it around each upright onto the twine, but yeah, would take a long time, and I then also thought that maybe they would be more likely to have actually used the twine itself to wrap round, but I've already glued it in place and stuff, so it's a bit late to something like that, but that's another thing to consider for a future attempt at this technique. So I am just in the middle of watching some Spectre Ops on Tabletop CP on my phone, which is out of shot at the moment. So what I'm going to do is pop that back on, and you can see this when it is completed. We're on to the final process for the field prior to actually just dressing it with a few bits of planks and what have you, and that is to put the grass on these areas here between where the path is going to be. And what I'm going to do for this is I'm going to use my dark flock, which I have here, and I'm going to scatter it quite sparsely in all the areas that don't have any flock at the moment, including underneath where the shed will go when I make the shed, because when it's not there it needs to look like something was there. So I'm going to grab my brush and get started, and I will pop some music on for you. There you have it. That's looking really nice. So we've got sparse grass where there's been a worn path. We've got an area for putting a shed on, which I'll do in another video. I went for this interesting, and it's worked very nicely actually, rope effect for the fence, and I quite like it. It's a bit different. It's dried very nicely since I put the PVA all over it, and it does delineate the edge of the field quite nicely. The crops has worked brilliantly. I mean, that's a good technique. The pond looks great. These little reeds are looking brilliant. I'm bottom line very happy with that. So now I will let that dry. I will give it an all over spray with the PVA, let that dry again, and then it's pretty much done. I will be dressing it a bit. I've got some of these spare uprights which I'm going to put probably on the head or on the shed when I make the shed. So I think that's pretty much done bar ceiling, so I'm going to call that a wrap. So another project completed. That's a big thumbs up. Another build completed. How amazing is that? I hope you found that useful, and there were maybe some techniques in there that can help you to do your own builds and make your own fields or any other terrain that could be similar, like gardens or anything like that. I was particularly enjoyed learning how to use the water effects from Liquitex, as I hadn't done that before, and I think that looks really well, and I'm quite looking forward to making use of that again. So there's nothing more to say now, just before I go over to some more photographs which I've taken, which show the build off in a little more detail with still pictures taken in a photography booth. The final thing to say, of course, is if you have not yet subscribed, please do so. Watch those numbers go up with some amazement, and I appreciate every single one of you that watch these videos. Of course, if you are subscribing, don't forget to ding the bell. YouTube will not tell you about my videos unless you do. So if you do want to be informed, you may as well do that. And last but by no means least, thank you so very much for watching Beard Clipper.